Welcome back, y'all, to today's video. Hope you've ridden today or are about to go for a bike ride after this video. But in the meantime, while you join me, I want to discuss why I am still riding a vintage bike in this modern era. Currently, I'm riding the trail in Central Florida called the Van Fleet Trail, and it's just a straightaway, which is pretty nice. Don't have to stop too much. But as you can tell, my performance Vitesse has returned once again. But this time I got my Suntour GPX components on this bike. And that leads me to my first point of why I like to ride this vintage bike with the vintage components and everything, is the silver components. Now there's a few versions of silver, chrome like the brake calipers, and kind of the satin gunmetal look on the GPX crankset, and a little bit of those details on the derailleurs. But with the silver components, it just pops, especially when the sunlight hits it. It's almost like a glitter effect. It's hypnotizing. And that's the thing that isn't really pushed in modern bikes. It's just all black components all the time. Now you have these really boutique parts that are really overpriced, in my opinion. But with the vintage silver components, you can get them at such a discounted price, especially if they're used. As long as they're in good condition, they just look better. Also, I've said this in a previous video, the combination of the silver quill stem and the silver drop bars, it's just art. I love looking at it, and I try my best to not really use the cycling mount for my phone, but when I'm filming I always have it on. But I just love glancing at it because it just looks so good. And that being said, about the quill stem and the 26mm drop bar combination, it does have a little bit of flex. However, with these roads out here in Florida, even the trails, sometimes tree roots will grow under it and cause this wavy effect. Riding out here is way more rough than it was in Vegas, surprisingly. Now, if I had a really stiff, rigid bike, it would be pretty uncomfortable. And on top of that, if you've seen one of my recent shorts, the Michelin Dynamic Sport tires that I purchased them as 700 by 25C. However, they totally measure 23C, and that was not my intent, but whatever. I put them on, started riding them, and I noticed it's really not that bad, especially with the shock absorption from the stem, combination of the steel frame set. It actually absorbs quite a bit. I'm surprised. I really thought the 23C tires wasn't gonna work. It's gonna be super uncomfortable. And it feels like 25, 28C tires out here, so I'm definitely pleased. Again, if you've been here for a while on my channel, I've showcased the Sun M13 wheel set multiple times. But back to the topic about silver components, the silver spokes look fantastic. I've raved about them before, especially in the sunlight. And again, these shallow profile wheels, I feel, are actually really fast. We don't live in a wind tunnel, and all this aerodynamics, I'm just not a person who buys that. Sure, maybe if you're shaving off a few seconds from a grand tour, maybe a time trial, but air in the real world is always being disturbed. You're never gonna get smooth air, even in this still day in the morning in Florida. There's still little wind gusts and air disturbances, so I just don't buy it. But these are 36 spoke wheel sets, and durability was my main priority, so that's why I went with them. Oh, and I've never used the Suntour GPX crankset before, and it's really nice. I think it's really stiff, and I'm enjoying it, especially with the mounting bolt covers. it looks really seamless. I love it. And I am using the original chain rings, the 5242, and out back I do have a Suntour 7-speed freewheel that goes from a 13 tooth to a 21 tooth cog. Now you may be saying, those are some pretty heavy gears. Yes, but again, I'm in Florida, it's super flat. Even the hills is no big deal. I gotta hit up Claremont one day. Now I'm coming up to this portion in the Van Fleet Trail where the tree roots have gone crazy. There's so many bumps and it's extremely uncomfortable if you don't stand up. I've come here on my fixed gear, and of course you don't usually stand up on a fixed gear, and it hurts so bad right in the groin area. At least I can stand up on this bike and use my legs as shock absorbers. I will say one negative though in getting these vintage parts is sometimes if you want to complete a group set, finding every single component might be pretty difficult. For example, I've been trying to find the Suntour GPX brake levers for the longest time, and I can't find them at all. Once in a while, a pair will pop up on eBay and they look atrocious. They look abused, left outside for decades. So I've accepted that I'm just not gonna find those, and that's why I have the Suntour Cyclone brake levers on here. Now, are they the most comfortable? Not too much. The Shimano SLR versions are way more comfortable, but it does the job just fine. Particularly, I'm more in the drops than the hoods out here. I also had the matching Suntour Cyclone rim brake calipers, and they're just fine. Single pivot brakes don't bother me at all. I'm never really wanting more, to be honest. That's a huge topic of discussion where everyone is just complaining about brakes and battling about it. And even when I had my Fuji and I did the Red Rock loop where there was heavy descents, those brake calipers were probably the weakest I've ever owned. I just adapted to them and they were fine. So I don't know, this whole debate on brakes, I'm just not a part of that. But with these Suntour Cyclone brake calipers, they are single pivot and they work great. Now, a lot of folks complain about single pivot brakes. That centering is kind of tedious, and I've gotten used to them. You get the skill and you can center them super easy and they stay centered. I get it, dual pivot brake calipers do center a bit easier because of the adjustment screw, and they're a bit stronger, but my philosophy is your brakes are only as strong as the traction in your tires. And if I'm riding 23C tires, I don't want these to lock up real easy. But the thing with these vintage bikes is they really weed out the posers. If someone who doesn't truly like cycling sees this bike, they kind of scoff at it, and it's whatever, because I certainly don't want to be acquaintances with someone like that. But if someone truly loves cycling, no matter what bike they have, they'll still appreciate the vintage bikes. True cyclists always do, including myself. I will say though, what I am convinced about is riding in Florida, I think the better bike to go with is going to be a gravel bike or anything with fat tires. Because I just tried to film that down tube shifter clip and it's so rough. Even on this perfectly paved route, it's still pretty bumpy. Got a lot of little mini jumps out here. Kind of rewinding back to the gearing thing too. I have a double crankset in the front, 7-speed in the back, and I really haven't been shifting. Now I'm so stoked that I'm back on down tube shifters, and around my area there's a few inclines, a little bit of up and downs, but nothing crazy. But specifically riding in Florida, aside from accelerating efficiently, once you're at speed, it's like I'm not wanting any more gears. So I know that's kind of more niche because a lot of states have hills and everything, hill climbs, and you do need the gearing, but I almost would advocate, I'm turning into a single speed fixed gear type person out here, but I'll still keep this bike. I have the closest gear ratios possible with these old parts. Again, if you've seen some of my previous videos, I do a lot of my own bike maintenance. And just the thing that can't be beat is the maintenance on this bike. I've taken apart this Performance Vitesse multiple times, put multiple components on it, and it's super easy. It's almost like building with Lego. The cables are exposed, easy to get to. You can diagnose things super easy. And if you like to try new things, new components that you might find on eBay or locally, you just take off the old one super quick, put it back on, and you're good to go. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I know that for a fact. But again, just to be a little fair in this and talk about the cons, particularly the quill stem is kind of a pain. Looks the best in my opinion, but is the worst when you want to swap brake hoods, or if you want to play with stem length but want to stick to quill stems. That's the biggest pain, is once you get it on there, if you wrap it up, think it's okay, and then after a few rides you find out the stem too long or too short, you got to unwrap it, take it off, take everything off, slide the stem off, and then put the new one on. So that's a huge con with the vintage parts. But I'd rather deal with that than hydraulic fluid and internal cable routing. So that's not too bad of a trade-off in my opinion. I guess there's gonna be a lot of hot takes in this video, but another huge thing that I'm just not sold on whatsoever, and I roll my eyes on some of the videos I find on YouTube, is weight and weight savings. Like if I'm looking up a tire doing research and they're putting it on the scale, and like Shimano Acera, Rio Gorilla, putting it on the scale, it's like, what are you doing? That's another gripe that I have, is like I'm on this bike, I'm riding it fast and efficiently, and I couldn't care less about the weight. I've never cared about the weight. I'm not in a Grand Tour and I'm not racing. So what's the point? As long as the bike is working efficiently, the components are good, or you're not misshifting or spokes are coming loose or anything like that, then to me, the bike is perfect. The bike is fine, and just go out and ride the bike. And the main ingredient with that thought process is, if I myself had unlimited funds and I bought $20,000 bike, $30,000 bike, Di2, electronic, all that nonsense, would I really be faster than Eddie Merckx, Bernard Hinault, Greg LeMond? No, absolutely not. I wouldn't even come close to them. And that's the thing too, like, if you want to worry about weight, see if you have one of these. Everyone can afford to lose thousands upon thousands of grams in their belly. Let's face it, that's the facts. Majority of us can eat a little bit better, get a little bit more fit, and the bike is not the issue. That's not why you're gonna get dropped. It's because of fitness and the extra grams in the belly. I'm riding this bike because I really enjoy riding this bike, and I enjoy riding this bike fast. And that's kind of a gripe that I have, is it's the weirdest thing where it's like, if you have these vintage bikes and these steel bikes and these older components, people have this demeanor like you're not allowed to ride them fast or something. It's the most bizarre thing. And that's the most enjoyment I get out of cycling, is taking these slow, quote unquote, slow bikes and riding them fast. Especially when your bike has the proper fit and your fitness is up there. It's such a blast, and I don't feel like I'm lacking. I don't feel like I need or want more. So a big focal point of these vintage bikes is the down tube shifters. I've been riding down tube shifters for years, and you will master them and you will get your coordination with them, where I'm just as fast shifting down tube shifters as STI shifters, honestly. Once you get muscle memory and you know your gearing, it's gonna be a non-issue. Not to mention, once again, super easy to work on, replace for cheap. And Shimano still makes 8-speed down tube shifters, although it wouldn't work on this bike. If I had a modern wheel set with 130 millimeter spacing, modern hub, I could just throw on a super cheap 8-speed cassette, which I do have, buy the brand new Shimano down tube shifters, and I'm good to go. All right, just doing a quick stop because I want to get some cinematic footage of my components. You know, a thing I did do with this wheel set is originally the rear axle is 126 millimeters and this frame set is 130 millimeter spacing. So I actually took my Shimano R7000 end nuts, I don't know what you call them, but I grinded the axle down with an angle grinder, screwed on those end nuts on this and made it 130 millimeter spacing. So it fits this bike perfectly, even with the 7-speed group set, shifts perfectly fine. Again, this trail is really good, but the one flaw is when you stop, the bugs start swarming, so I better get going. You know, another thing with this bike is I can put modern components on here as well and it still works. As long as they're compatible, all black components look great. The vintage silver looks great. That's the thing with this vintage bike. It works well with new and old eras. But if you took a modern, brand new aero tubed bike and you put like Dura Ace 7700 on it, I don't think it's gonna look quite right. It's just my opinion though. All in all though, those are just some of the million reasons why I ride a vintage road bike in this modern era. Let me know what you think. I know a lot of the things I said were pretty controversial, but that's the fun of it. It's fun to go back and forth with each other in a fun way, because at the end of the day, we're all just riding bicycles, and that's the main point. I don't care what kind of bike you ride. Everyone has their preferences. I have my preferences in regards to steel bikes, vintage components, but even modern budget ones. I love those bikes too. If you like some of the things I said, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. I don't mind. As long as you and I are riding, that's all that matters. So thank you so much for joining me in this video. I really enjoyed making it for you all. So if you have any questions about this bike, go ahead and leave comments below, or anything vintage, component related, or budget oriented. Let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. Also, some of the longtime subscribers are very knowledgeable as well. So let's help each other out. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.